Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sniper Sundays. I hope you're all well. Had a great weekend and ready to get stuck in for a new week. As mentioned on Friday, I've got a big week ahead of us. Should be very, very active. So I'm actually looking forward to this week and really going to be watching the market as soon as it opens to see how we react from the weekend, but also see how the market tries to move. So the reason because I'm saying that is I'm just going to go through the economic calendar. So what we have straight away on Monday is we have some New Zealand news straight away, which is at 1 o'clock in the morning, all UK times. We've got various news, power news, New Zealand dollar news on Monday. Not the biggest news in the world, just the normal sort of current account news and stuff like that. But there is going to be some news which could make a move. So we can see here we've got New Zealand news at 1 in the morning, and then we've also got it at 10 p.m. in the UK time. Tuesday we've got Aussie dollar news. You can see here cash rate, what the interest rate was. Is forecasted to be taken down to 0.75% from 1%. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We've got the Reserve Bank of Australia rate statement, the government Laos speaking, all sorts happening for the Aussie dollar on Tuesday morning. So it's going to be very, very active. CAD news and US dollar news Tuesday. Wednesday then, just sort of standard US dollar news and crude oil inventories. That comes out every Wednesday. Thursday, some US dollar news, but we've got the main one on Friday. We've got non-farm payroll. And then we've got Fed. Powell is speaking on Friday as well. So that happened last month when we had non-farm payroll. And then the head of the Federal Reserve came out and spoke. And I think you remember Donald Trump or President Trump came out and started tweeting as well. So it was very, very, very active on that Friday. So Friday's the sort of the main day. Now, as I explained before, we can often see things start to move early in the week before the actual move happens. So what I'm going to be doing is looking out for how the market reacts straight away off the open, and sort of how we react Monday, Tuesday, coming into Friday. So Friday is mainly the US dollar. So I'm going to be looking for signs for the US dollar on US dollar trades as soon as the market opens. Monday, Tuesday, monitoring very closely, looking to get into positions on the US dollar. But we also have obviously the Aussie dollar news, Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar coming in. So what I'm going to do is just start off with Euro USD, just a look at where we were at last week. So if I just remove this at the moment, I just left this on just so we could revisit where we were at last week and what we're sort of looking at. So last week we took a nice little trade from this short zone. Gave it when we were trading within this short zone. Got an nice entry around 1.0965-ish area. And we had a nice push down, and we had about 60 pips in profit. Now on Friday, I was hoping that we would have a bigger push to the downside, obviously. You can see here we got this daily support, touch 1, touch 2, and we were showing signs of reversal here. But what you can often see at times like this, obviously we have made that third dip lower from support, which I explained on Thursday evening. I said was something I'll be watching out, because as I always explain, if we do make a reversal, we often have a third dip below or above a support or resistance to take out any stop losses that would have been set below here. But what we often can sometimes see is a false flag here as well. We could have a little push up, trying to bring in some long traders in just to create that little bit more of liquidity, trying to bring in long traders in here, thinking that we're going to reverse from here, getting in a little bit too early, buying here, and then sometimes that's what we need in order to have the big move down and break lower. So I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen at the moment. We're still holding a short trade. I'll just get rid of some of this at the moment. But if I just clear this, it might make it a little bit more clearer. But yeah, overall, we're very bearish on Euro USD. But given that non-farm payroll is coming up, maybe that can be what can change the direction of this market, maybe temporarily, maybe long term. So at the moment, weekly chart, also coming towards the end of the month, so I'll be keeping an eye on the monthly candlestick when we close the monthly this week. But you can see here very, very bearish at the moment. Dropped down to the weekly. Last week's candle was bearish. Did come down and tap that weekly stroke daily support here, spiked through, and we are showing some support. So many will be looking at this today or over the weekend and be looking at maybe taking long trades. So we can still see here though on the daily chart, we are sort of we're just moving sideways. So we have dipped below that support. We did close below, but we have come back up on the Friday. So it's quite interesting here to see what's going to happen with the US dollar. So when I've been talking about Euro USD, I've been talking about the dollar index quite a lot last week. As you can probably now have seen how they act very sort of in sync with each other. They have that inverse correlation. So I'll just go over to the dollar index, which is here. Let me just go to the weekly chart. But what we can see here with the dollar index on a weekly chart is we had quite a strong week. We had a little bit of a pullback on Friday, which we saw. We can see here last week was quite a strong week. We just zoom right out on the dollar index. You can see here that on the weekly we've been just sort of creating high highs, high lows, high highs, high lows, high highs, and just trending higher. Even though we have some pullbacks, US dollar has been in an uptrend for the past year or so. You can see here, it kind of looks like we could come up and tap this level up here. You can see this form of resistance and perhaps create this huge head and shoulders on a weekly chart. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But we can see that there is room to the upside here to sort of fill this void and hit these previous resistance levels up around this level. So at the moment, what we have to do is drop down and just look at more recent activity and just try and understand how the US dollar and the market is active. So you can see here, as I said, we keep higher highs, higher lows, and we're attempting to make a new higher high at the moment. Last week was quite a bullish candle. Drop down to the daily chart. I was highlighting that I was hoping to come out and sort of test this resistance. Last week we came very, very close. But again, we can see here that even though we haven't touched that yet, you can see here Wednesday, Thursday was quite bullish days last week. If we just zoom in here, see Wednesday, Thursday. Then we have a bit of a doji candle on Friday. Just a doji candle showing a bit of that was slowing down slightly. Doesn't really show that we're going to reverse yet. So the ball is in the bull's court at the moment. We are still quite bullish. If I drop down to the 4 hour, I've highlighted this in the past when we're looking at trades, and you can see that you might think we're coming to the end, or we might be coming to sort of the top of a trend. But every time we make a pullback, we have a big push back up. These are very, very, very important to watch out for. These candlesticks here, these pin bar candlesticks, especially on an uptrend like this. What you can notice is you spot these, and you can see another one here, and they're a very good sign that price is going to actually push up higher. So you can see here, you might have thought that this was coming to the end of its uptrend, so maybe creating a sort of double top here, as you get one creating a high here, then creating another high. But as we push back, if you see a spike down like this, a spike to the downside there, and then especially if it's followed by another bullish candle, you don't want to be in this market trying to short it, because it's going to go higher. You can see here now, quite simply, that resistance, we've broken higher, we've come down and retested that as support, and we keep just coming down, having these spikes to the downside, pin bars, rejecting price in around these regions, and now looking like we're going to come up and make another move up to the upside. So at the moment, I have to obviously see how the market reacts, but it still looks like the US dollar can still have another push to the upside. What happens when we have a push up here is going to be another story, and this is where the fundamentals could come into place this week. We will have this sort of double top, creating, let's just go back, creating yearly highs or new highs not seen since back in 2017. So it's going to be quite crucial, and we might need something strong to help us break through this. We might try and break through it before non-farm payroll. Maybe non-farm payroll will give us the boost that the US dollar needs to actually try and break through this. So I'm going to be watching this. You might see a little push up initially. From there, we might see a little bit of a pullback. might have a little bit of a pull away as we have another little retracement, and then we could push up higher later in the week. So there's lots to sort of kind of monitor. We have to keep an eye on the US dollar and keep an eye on the US dollar pairs. We know that a lot of pairs like Euro US dollar are at their lows. So will the fundamentals change things around, or are we going to see this push down even further? What we could possibly see here on Euro USD is a push down early in the week into new lows, and then the news may weaken the US dollar and push us up higher. This sort of something similar happened a couple of months ago. Let's have a look here. I think it was here actually, yes. So you see here, we came down, we were testing weekly support just before non-farm payroll. Then the day before non-payroll here, we had a big push down to the downside, as you can see with this pin bar, and then we put all the way back up, and then non-farm payroll came out and we pushed all the way back up. We see that little push to the downside first to bring in short sellers below this weekly support level. So we're at a support level here again. So let's see, we might have a push down early in the week, a sort of similar situation, but I'll be keeping an eye out and obviously updating on anything that happens. So US dollar, as I said, is very important as we are at these sort of 2-year highs, and lots of pairs, as in Aussie dollar, are under pressure from the US dollar, New Zealand dollar, US dollar, which I'll come to more in a minute. You can see here we're sort of at lows that we haven't been in since 2015 here. So the US dollar is weighing quite heavy on these and pushing these down, but I'll come to that in a minute. So Euro US dollar, very, very important levels. I'm going to hold on to this short trade that we're in. We're about 20 pips in profit. Let's see how the market opens. But currently, let's have a look at how we are trending down. So you can see here, we're making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. We still have this trend line coming down above us just here. The inner trend line was just broken last week. This is where we initially got our trade from. One of the conferences, you can see here 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, where we took that short trade. We come down and we're trying to look like we're making a new lower high here. We might make a push to the downside, but there is still room to come up and perhaps test this sort of trend line, or test this sort of support resistance level, support resistance where we took our short from. So there is potential for price to push back up into this level where we may need to watch out for. But at the moment, you can see here we're clearly still in a downtrend, and if we are going to be having any sort of reversal, I expect price to still sort of have another push to the downside anyway. So with our short trade, I'm still expecting us to sort of push down into this region, maybe make a double bottom. Ideally, I'm looking at price to come down and make a new low around these levels, and then possibly we could look at taking a long trade. But at the moment, still looking at short, still looking at another push to the downside, and keeping an eye on this pair closely. Euro GBP, interesting one. So I've been highlighting for a couple of weeks now that we had that really big push on a weekly chart. As you can see here, there's one push with no pullback. Then we've sort of had this retracement now all the way back to the 61.8%, which lined up with that 0.8800 level as support. And here you can see the sort of morning star formation off this 1, 2, 3. Quite a bullish week. Closed quite bullish at the end. We're just hitting 0.900 resistance. Let me just get that one out of the way so it's perfectly sitting. This 0.8900 resistance level here. But nice morning star formation. Looks like we can have another continue this push up to the upside. So let's drop down to the daily chart. What we're looking at here, it's a nice strong day at the end. Is weakness on the pound is helping this. So let's look at how we are with the direction on this. We have this trend coming along the top here. So we can see here we've got a little bit more room to the upside. So what we might possibly see is a little push up here. We might see a little push up to the upside here, and then a bit of a pullback. But also what I'm keeping an eye on this week, a pullback before going higher, or a pullback, and we might see another wave back down, as we are overall quite bearish on this. What I am looking out for on market open is how we react around this 0.8900 level. You can see this is a strong level, form of support here. final resistance. Drop down to the 4-hour chart. We're starting to slow down slightly here, so we might see a little bit of a slowdown, and we might see a push down back to sort of these levels. For a reversal back up to the upside, ideally I would like to see the price come back down into this region. We find support here once again, we could then see a bigger move up to the upside, so it'd be a nice long opportunity. So we might see that. So we'll be watching the market here, see how the market reacts around these sort of levels. It could be a nice sort of intraday or short-term short trade here, but I will be watching as we do, obviously, as I said, have that trend line sitting just above us. So price could pop up that little bit higher, continue with last week's bullishness, pop up that little bit higher, and from here bringing in long traders trading above the 0.8900 level. But from there, then we might experience that pullback, coming back into this area, sort of a Fibonacci retracement sort of setup, and then we might look for the new long trades. But there's a few options here that I'm eyeing up. We could have a trade, a shorter term short trade, and then a longer term long. But we have to see how the market acts. But I am watching this one carefully. And there's a lot of opportunities, I think, this week across a lot of pairs, and some other pairs that we don't normally look at as well, which I'll be bringing in and updating you with as well, because I think there's going to be a lot of movement this week. Euro NZD, not too interested in this one at the moment, apart from watching how the New Zealand dollar reacts on in general, to see if we gain strength or if we get any weaker. So New Zealand dollar, we can see here we had this big impulsive move up here. So we were looking for a pullback. So we had this pullback, and then last week we actually took a long trade, the trade that we lost on this last week. We had a pullback on this. I can say we had a bit of a pullback like this, and we were looking for a long trade from this sort of level. And we seem to break out of this sort of trend line, and we were about 10-20 pips up in profit, and then it rolled over and came back down to the downside. So what you can see here is we've had the euro weakening here because the New Zealand dollar hasn't been strong. But at the moment we've got this from this first big impulsive move here, we're having a bit of a pullback. You could say like a flag pattern. Let me just put this on here, a sort of flag pattern, and what we're watching now is how we react here. If we were to break out to the upside, then this would look like it's going to continue and make a new high. But currently the New Zealand dollar is very, very low. It is very, very weak, and it looks like maybe next week, if the US dollar was to weaken or the New Zealand dollar news comes out and we strengthen, the New Zealand dollar, if it strengthens, could push this down lower and bring us right back down to that 1.7250 level. So this is quite interesting. As you can see here, this is the third touch on the trend line. We'll drop down to the 1 hour. You can see we just closed quite bearish on the end of the Friday. So this is one I'll be keeping an eye on here. But I am keeping an eye on New Zealand dollar strength. As I said, when the market opens, we've got some news coming out straight away on Monday. But this is an interesting one here. GBP USD, we didn't take a short trade on this. We're short on GBP JPY, but this is a very good indication to how the pound is behaving at the moment. Weekly evening star formation of 1.2500, back in its overall bearish direction. Obviously, we can see here, we all know that the pound is basically being very, very weak. We had a good couple of weeks, a nice little retracement, well overdue, well needed. But at the moment, you can see here a big evening star formation showing that the bears are coming back into the market to push this down, which is good for us because we had that GBP JPY trade as well. However, what I am looking out for on this, on the daily sort of chart here, you can see from this move down here, we had a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and then we came up, sort of made higher high, and we could come back and could class this as a higher low. We're just finding some support now on Friday, so we might see a little bit of a slowdown here, or we could just break through and come down to 1.2250. But this is worth highlighting and worth keeping a look at this sort of level here. So we drop down. We can see here on the daily we're very, very bearish after that push from the top. That we had one drive to the upside, two drive to the upside, and that third and final drive up to the upside. See the daily candle peaking at the top, taking out previous highs. As I mentioned earlier, we always before a big reversal, nearly always see a big push to the upside, take out any stops or any stop losses up here, or try to bring short sellers into the market for that liquidity to then push down big in the other direction. 4-hour chart, we can see here, Friday we ended quite bearish as we were pushing back down. US dollar was gaining a little bit more strength, but this level is quite interesting to see. We do have the weekly support sitting just underneath, but as I said, this is just a level of support worth highlighting. You can see here resistance, support. So I'll be watching this on market open, seeing if we do the pound does find any support, see how it reacts over the weekend. Pound is very weak at the moment overall, as I just explained, but let's just have a look here. We can see we sort of come down and we're testing this 50% retracement level. So we've retraced 50% of this push that we've seen over the last couple of weeks from here to here. So I'm watching price around this level as market opens. Drop down to the 1 hour. You can just see here now, we're creating new lows, new low, and we're watching this now to come down. See if we can make a new low past this and come down to weekly 1.225, 1.2250. But this is just an interesting level to watch. See if we make a double bottom here, if we fail to break lower, or what price will do around this level. So I'll be watching out for that, as well as sort of similar situation with GBP JPY. You can see here again, big push down. Let's just go to the weekly. It's a bit sloppier, but like an evening star formation on a weekly. Again, it's quite strong, but we are finding support at 1.3250, 50 here. As explained with GBP USD, we are having a bit of a retracement here, nearly down to this sort of 38.2. But you can see here there's potential to even come down even further, lining up this 61.8% all the way down to 130. Holding that trade that we have for maybe another 250 pips. However, remember, even though we are having a retracement here from this big move, and we're having a retracement here, this is quite a big move as well, as we know, with that 300 pips that we're currently up. So we could have a little retracement back up before making another move back down. This is why we hedge trade, because this is a very good example actually. Hedge trading. So again, we will talk more in detail, but this is a big move up, and then we've now caught a 300 pip move down. So we can see here that on the daily chart, if I just get rid of these, that at the moment the bigger move was the daily long trade. We've had a pullback retracement, which we've made 300 pips on. Now if we take a hedge trade from here, for instance, and we come up 100 or 200 pips, we'll make some money on that retracement. Should this retracement actually not be a retracement and moves up even higher and comes up, this 25% that we have running from the short will be closed, but this new trade that we have will continue to make lots and lots of profit. But should we have come up about 200-300 pips here, we know that we'll make some money, we'll bank some money. And if that is just a retracement on the bigger move down, we'll continue making, we'll have made money here. We'll close a percentage of our trade when it hits us at break even here, but then we'll be making money on this. We'll be making money on this trade that we have from the very top as well, and we might even take another short entry. So bit complicated. We will go into it in more detail in a webinar, but we're just moving on to the next stage with that webinar tomorrow with price action. So what I'm basically getting at here is we might start seeing a little bit of support around this level. We can see here 1, 2, 3, sort of triple bottom at the moment. We'll be keeping an eye on this level to see if we continue to find support. We might have a little bit of a pop up, and we might look for a hedge trade from this sort of level. So you can see here Friday we had 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 try to break out. Very manipulative on Friday. This is what you would call a strong breakout on the 4-hour chart. However, price flipped back over. You could actually see that price was slowing down though. Dropped down to the 1-hour chart, strong breakthrough. So we had that push up, then we had that slowdown, that doji candle, sort of hanging man, a bigger hanging man, and then we came down. But it was choppy price action, and it was trying to catch people out there. But you can see here, at the moment, we are in a downtrend. So we'll be just watching this to see if this can continue lower, and perhaps on market open, GBP JPY and GBP USD continue lower. USD JPY, keeping an eye on this one with the US dollar situation this week. Similar to what I was just showing about GBP JPY, we had that initial move up, then we had that pull back down here, we had that form of retracement, but then now we can see we're pushing up higher. But are we actually just having a retracement from here to here? As you can see, we've tapped that 61.8% and the 61 point, and my extensions line up perfectly with 10600. So should the US dollar weaken and the Japanese yen gain strength, you can see here we've come back up, we've retested the weekly resistance at 10800, and there is an argument for taking short trades to come down. So rather than this being a retracement from, let me get rid of this. We're looking at a retracement from this move up. You can see we retraced. We didn't actually come down to 38%. What you can see is we have had a pullback here, but price is slowing down around the 10800 level. So let me just get rid of this. Price is slowing down around this 10800 level. So I am keeping a very, very close eye on this US dollar situation this week. This is going to be the main thing to sort of look out for. We can see here, getting a bit sloppy. We did have this break above, then we broke below, but we were looking at shorts next week. I'll just adjust this. We're coming back up. US dollar JPY could be a nice trade next week if we come up here and reject this sort of trend line once again. And as I said, if I drop down to the 4 hour, you've just seen the sort of Fibonacci play that looks very, very, very nice. Coming up to that 61.8%. Tweezer tops off to 78%, bearish engulfing, but however we just need to see how price will like to react when the market opens. At the moment, you can also see that we are high highs, high lows, high highs, high lows, high highs. So I think we could still have another little push to the upside yet, and I'll be looking at price around these regions. So keep an eye on USD JPY around this sort of level coming into this week. USD CAD choppy as hell. Good one for educational purposes. Again, last week, talking about triangle formations. I was looking at taking a trade on this last week a couple of times, but it's just been so choppy that it's basically been better to stay away from it at the moment. You can see here, triangle formation. We came down, we found support, had a fake out to the downside, then we're pushing up. I'll just close this one off and bring in a closer one because it's on the lower time frame. Then we can see here, they came up, tapped the top of the triangle formation here, and then came down. And then if we adjust this one to this wick here, you can see then price again broke and then spiked all the way back up. So on the 1 hour close, we had a really, of 30 minutes, we had a strong close, then we closed all the way back up. So Friday was very, very choppy with USD CAD. And again, we're still waiting to try and see a bit more from this. Overall, it looks quite bearish at the moment. You can just see here, every time it pushes up, it sort of has a push down, a bigger push down, even though we do spike back up. We are still quite choppy with this one, but I'm keeping an eye on it. And again, if we want to update next week, it's a bit hard at the moment where it's so choppy. So I won't try to call it just yet. I'm going to keep an eye on this sort of triangle formation situation and just this support that's coming through. But there's a lot more trades that look a bit more promising and have more potential than ones that are really ranging like this. However, there could still be a really nice opportunity on this. If we have nice trades on Aussie dollar and NZD, we know that USD CAD likes to have an inverse correlation with Aussie dollar. So we could look at possibly taking a trade on both. Aussie dollar at the moment looking quite weak. Any sort of move it tries to make up, it gets pushed back down. You can see here sort of an evening star formation off the 0.6875 level. Doji candle last week, however, showing that price did try to push down, but couldn't. Came back up, got pushed that down. So a bit of an indecisive week. Drop daily doesn't look great. You can see here we have had this sort of 61.8% retracement level, which I highlighted last week. But we're choppy around this level. And I think we need that news on Tuesday to come out to help move this in a different direction. So I'm going to be watching how this reacts on Monday. and we do have that the rate statement coming out on Tuesday as well. So that will make a move on Aussie dollar. So we'll keep an eye on this, see if there's any signs tomorrow to get into a trade early, make sure that we're in profit and have our stop losses in place before any news comes out. But if not, we might need to wait for the news, as the news can play with the market, move price in either direction before making a real move. So we'll keep an eye out on that and watch very, very carefully. NZD USD, what I was mentioning earlier, very, very weak at the moment. We just zoom up right out on the weekly chart here. You can see we got these sort of lows around this level here, that the market might make another dip down to sort of take out those sort of levels. We are flirting and just playing around this 0.6300 level at the moment. We've had a few attempts to push up higher last week. Every time it did, kind of got pushed down. You can see here low lows, lower highs. Made a lower low, could be a lower high here, and price could possibly make another move lower. You can see here at the moment these sort of candlesticks, this area just means that price is moving sideways. See how it's just doji, pin bar, sort of doji, bigger doji, pulling price in both directions. So yeah, it's sort of creating a little bit of a triangle formation here as well. Just showing that price is just sort of doesn't really know which way it wants to go. So this is an interesting one. News comes out straight away. We'll keep an eye out on this, but at the moment, the New Zealand dollar US dollar does look like it could potentially have another push down to the downside to make another lower low. Choppy price action here. You can see daily we had this break back below 0.6300 here, as you can see. Strong close. We had to try to push back up, spiked above, but closed back below support or resistance, sorry. And then Friday we done the same. So it looks like we could still roll over to the downside and make a new lower low, and possibly come down into this sort of region. So let's see how the market opens Sunday evening and see, do we have a possibility to maybe even take a little short trade. If this counter trend line breaks here, then we are going to go lower. So I'll be watching price as it comes down to here and plays around with this sort of level. This is the only thing sort of holding it up, holding any sort of support for New Zealand dollar at the moment. Should this break, then I think we're going to come down into sort of these regions here, around 0.6200 to 0.6250 region. You can see price decline into that level. Dollar index you spoke about, it's quite important. We're coming up to that double top. Oil is one that we need to talk about after last week. So Friday was very, very choppy with this. We had a really nice entry on Thursday, and the reason I was keeping our stop loss so close as well is we were looking at this trend line here on Thursday that I highlighted. So if I just drop down to the 4 hour, what we could see was we came down on oil. I'll just adjust this. We came down and made a double bottom, 1, 2, and had this really nice morning star formation. Now, some people took a bit of profit, some people didn't, but you know what? You can't get mad. When you have a double bottom like this, and you have a morning star formation like that, bullish one like that, and the daily finished as it did, the probability was on our side for this to push up higher. Fortunately, Friday we had some crazy price action. We had that big dip to the downside, which, as I said, happens before potential reversals, because anyone who hadn't had their stop losses at break even may have took a trade here with stop losses open around these sort of levels, and then price likes to come down and take out those stop losses before making a move higher. So we had a big push down, then a big push up. However, I was watching this, but it just didn't give us the right sort of entry to take. I'll just highlight this for a minute, and we say that we had support here. Now we had this big push down, and I was watching this to potentially take another long trade once again and update everybody. But we had this sort of 30-minute spike to the downside. But after a huge push down, this could have just been a little breather before another move down once again. Then what I was looking at on the 15-minute is we had this nice push up. We came back up into the sort of region that we actually took the trade from previously, around 55.80, like this region. What we can see here then is we had this 15-minute shooting star sort of formation here, looked like after this big push down that we could have been having this little retracement before price then making another move lower. It was late on Friday or Friday afternoon, knowing that price can be highly manipulative, so I decided to stand back. And then what we could see is we actually pushed up higher, but then after that we had a big push all the way back down again. So quite choppy, and these aren't little moves either on oil. These are 100 pip moves at a time. As we know, we can make a lot of money out of oil, but it's very, very, very volatile. So at the moment, we finished quite bullish on the end of Friday. Daily, really, really, really nice pin bar. But the other reason I was also keeping our stop loss quite tight was because we were using, as I just mentioned, we were using this trend line. But I was always aware that on the bigger picture, we had this potential trend line to come out and try and tap this as a level of support, which is why we may have seen that big push down. We've had one push down, two push down, then that third and final drive to the downside to tap that trend line. We may now be finding some support here. So this week, we'll be watching very, very closely for a potential reversal here and watching price action. Do have this trend line coming down across the top. As you can see, if we just adjust this, we can see we're coming down across here, and it's getting quite tight here with the trend line. We're bouncing off it. We might see a break to the upside, but I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this on the lower time frames this week. So we can see here, we sort of created this triple bottom, 1, 2, 3. But this was very sloppy on Friday, so I'm going to watch and see how price reacts around here. We also have this sort of resistance level as well, as we found that every time we tried to push up with our 100 pip trade, 90, 100 pip trade, we would then push back down. So you can see here, we're sort of in this little bit of a range. So we'll see how price reacts. Obviously, it'd be nicer to get a long trade from lower down rather than higher up. So I'm going to wait and just let price after the weekend develop and see how we act around here. Gold is a tricky one. We are still in an uptrend, and as you can see here, daily or weekly trend line, you can see here we came down, sort of broke below, pushed up, but we'll adjust this now, and you can see here on the daily chart, they've had this pin bar similar to what I was talking about earlier. Not the strongest pin bar, but we've tried to break, had this push down, and we're rejecting. So it's showing us signs that price has the potential now to push back up to the upside, but how far? So drop down to the 4-hour chart here. You can see this really nice 4-hour bullish pin bar that we had on Friday, but then we actually pulled back down and closed below 1500. On the daily chart here, if I just get rid of this, you can see this really nice sort of, we have this head and shoulders formation. You can see this level coming across and acting as support. So this left shoulder, head, right shoulder. So we came down, tested support, keep coming down, tested the support once more, and it seems to be holding quite strong. So I am expecting a little push to the upside here, back up. Then it's just determined on how far. Do we have enough to keep pushing back up and break this sort of inverse and this head and shoulders formation and break this sort of resistance level around here, or will we just push back up into sort of these levels and then have the next wave of short selling, which could be the bigger wave where we roll over to the downside? So this is a big one next week. Obviously, the US dollar is going to affect this because the weakness or strength on the US dollar affects the price of gold. But at the moment, you can see here we are trading just below 1500. Going to watch how the market opens and acts on Monday. If we continue to sort of find support around these levels, then we could look at a trade popping up to around these levels here, around 1520, 1530, where we found previous resistance. And then we need to watch how price carries on from there. We do have another trend line coming across the top here. So this could come into play. We've had 0.1, we've had 0.2 now, and as you can see here, reasons why I'm highlighting this is this sort of formation forming. We could come up, test this sort of top of this resistance, and then we could push down to the downside. So watching for any signs on the lower time frame for possible entries to take along up to these sort of levels. From here, we'll have to be very careful to watch how price reacts around here, as we could then see a pushback down, or maybe a slight retracement before making a bigger push up to the upside. It all depends on what happens with fundamentals and news over the course of the next week or so. So watching out for that one, and that's about it. So we'll be updating as soon as the market opens, sort of or Monday, and could be quite busy. We've got lots of news. So there's lots of, I said, there's some other pairs that I'm looking at the moment. I'm going to let them develop a little bit more, and I'll also update you on those once if there's any anything to highlight or if there's any trades to take. So mark up your charts, take that all in. We know what we're looking at for next week, but we want to see how the market starts acting the first couple of days. Let's see any signs, see if we can take some trades early before the lead up to non-farm payroll. Speak to you soon. Have a great evening, and I'll see you as soon as the market starts to move. If not, it'll be on the morning call on Monday morning. Thank you.